Welcome to Rogue Trader. Please read the disclaimer and remember that prices can go down as well as up. BAE Systems definitely belong in my series of defensive stocks. They are the UK's largest weapons manufacturer, and according to the website Statista, they are in fact the sixth largest weapons manufacturer in the world, with sales of 21 billion in 2018. So BAE Systems actually do the development work for new weapons. Then they sell the units of weapons. That could be tanks, boats, submarines. And then even after they sell them, they still get an income stream for training, spare parts and maintenance, all this kind of thing. You see that their revenues can be split into land, sea and air, with air actually being the majority at 55% of their overall revenues. They sell all over the world. Their most important customer is the US, and then the UK is 19%, and obviously Saudi Arabia are very important too, at 13%. And one thing that's attractive about this stock is they do pay a 4.6% dividend, which is quite important to their shareholders, and so they're always likely to maintain this high dividend. At first glance, they do have a large order backlog of well over 40 billion, and they achieved new orders of about 20 billion in 2019, although the new orders perhaps has ticked down a little bit. So here's all the research I've been doing into this stock. In this year's half-year report, there was quite a nice breakdown into their sector performance. Also, there was a investor call which you can go on their website and listen to, which has some good slides. Where these slides are from their investor call, and you can see there's a good breakdown of each of their sales sectors and a summary of their sales in each of those sectors. And to just summarize all that, their electronic systems, as of their sales call in half year 2020, flat at about 2.8 billion. Then their cyber and intelligence business sector, that was 5% up, 1.2 billion in sales. Platforms and services was 2.2 billion, up 10%. Their air sector was 3.6 billion, that's up 8%. And then their maritime sector was 1.5 billion, which was flat. So from their latest investors call, their sales look quite good. So you can see here from their annual report, I got their 2020 revenue by division, and which is split into air, sea and land. And what I wanted to do was to take a look at their sales in these areas, so that I can understand more what the structure of this country's product portfolio, and then also to look at some of the big hitting products, to see and try and work out in the long term what's the longevity of these sales. So to start with air, you can see that 2 billion of their yearly sales, or 21% of their air sales, are the Eurofighter Typhoon. So the Eurofighter Typhoon, then, that's actually 11% of their sales overall, so that's very important. Now, this is a multi-role air superiority fighter, and it's been operational since 2003. It was developed by the UK, Germany and Italy. The French kind of bulked out of it. This was a European partnership project to create what was at the time the cutting-edge air superiority fighter. The current situation as of 2019 is that they're making this 11% of their sales overall from the manufacture of 13 units, plus operational support for the 571 units that are in. You can see here the UK is 160, Germany 143, Italy 96, and then there's also units sold to Spain, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Qatar, Austria and Oman. Now obviously the majority of this 2.2 billion is for currently operational units. And so I looked into, well, how long are these countries going to be keeping these units? And I can say, having done my research, that all of these countries are going to be keeping their units well into 2026. The only exception is Austria, who've only got 15 planes. In addition to this, Saudi Arabia have indicated they may want to buy an extra 48, and Kuwait and Qatar have also ordered new planes that are being delivered starting from 2020, as you can see in my schematic here. So looking into the Eurofighter Typhoon are pretty safe. And like I say, that's about actually 11% of BAE's overall sales. So next in their air program is the F-35 Lightning. BAE Systems make the sub-assemblies, some major sub-assemblies, basically the whole rear fuselage and the electronic systems within the F-35 Lightning. The F-35 Lightning is supposed to be the most advanced fighter currently in the world. It's basically, it might be a bit less maneuverable and stuff than the Eurofighter Typhoon even, but it's got a whole emphasis on stealth. And I did a bit of research, actually spoke to some people knowledgeable about this, and the way it is with modern warfare is it really is a case, is if your jet sees the other jet 10 minutes sooner, then you basically press a button and then that jet is blown out of the sky. It really is a case of whoever sees the other one first wins, and so it never really comes down to dogfights. So this is the rationale, and it certainly does have a far superior stealth profile to anything else. And then when you look at this product around the world, that does really validate its superiority, I think. So looking into the sales of this product, I mean, it's 6% of sales already, and currently there's actually 488 units that have been built. And as you can see, the sales are projected to increase 123, 130, 160 every year. So there's very good longevity in this this product and in this portion of BAE Systems sales. For air division, the Typhoon and F-35 Lightning sales look pretty robust for many years to come, and that's actually a third of all their sales in the air division. Then the other one I could look at was the Tornado. Now the Tornado is almost, I'd say, a Cold War era plane. I mean, it was developed in 1975 actually, and the UK has actually only just retired their fleets, but Germany, Italy and Saudi Arabia still have significant numbers. And I looked into it, and obviously it's unlikely we'll sell any more of these, but Germany and Italy actually have to keep theirs well into 2025 because they have to meet their NATO nuke specs. The Tornadoes are aircraft that are capable of carrying nuclear warheads, and they haven't got any alternative aircraft to do that. So it looks like, actually, almost to my surprise, rather than this 6% of total sales in threat of dying off, I think it's fairly safe. Okay, so the largest sales within the maritime division are their manufacture of submarines. So submarines account for 8% of sales overall. And I was quite pleased because it seems like there's going to be money coming in for submarines well into the 2030s. They have two different types of submarines they're selling: the Astute class, which is an attack submarine, and the Dreadnought class, which is a Trident nuclear deterrent submarine. And the Astute class, they've already delivered 4, but they're building another 3 we built between 2023, 2029, and the Dreadnought class. These are the nuclear submarines, which are obviously very expensive. Their total cost will be 31 billion. They've cut steel for the first 2, Dreadnought and Valiant, and then those aren't actually going to be delivered until 2030. So well beyond 2033, they'll still be manufacturing nuclear subs. So the submarine section's looking good, and then they also make complex warships. So BAE Systems are famous already for the Queen Elizabeth aircraft carriers, and however those have already been delivered for 7.6 billion. The worry then is, well, where are the sales coming in the future? Well, actually, they've got quite a bit going on. There's these River class offshore patrol vessels, Type 26 frigates and Hunter Type 26 frigates. And when I looked into it, they're delivering the River class offshore patrol vessels into 2021, with the Type 26 frigates and the Hunter Type 26 frigates, which are being sold to Australia. Those are being delivered well into 2031. So they're fairly strong in their complex warships, and we can say that the complex warships segment of their maritime sales looks fairly robust into the future. So then finally there's the land division. There's quite a lot of combat vehicles being delivered, but compared with air and maritime, it's lower numbers. But we've got here the Bradley fighting vehicle, M88 recovery vehicle, the armoured multiple purpose vehicle, this new self-propelled howitzer, a light tank, and amphibious combat vehicle. So, there's quite a range of different combat vehicles being produced. And here I've seen that the sales for most of these, they certainly last until about 2022. And for the armoured multi-purpose vehicle, that's currently in low rate production, and the full production of that's going to carry on through to 2030. Also, the MPF light tank. Here we've got an image of that. That's actually currently they're making just prototypes. So if they win the final bidding round with those prototypes, and that could be a substantial order in the future. So maybe not as really strong as air and maritime, but still pretty reasonable, I think. When you consider you'd expect some new things coming in the future as well. I should mention that within the land division, there's this weapon systems sector, and that's 45% of the sales overall. So looking at the overall trends over the last 5 years and against the FTSE, it's generally mirrored the FTSE. It's up 17% overall the last 5 years. So going back to 2016, the first thing is the US Navy signed a 0.6 billion supply contract for their advanced precision kill weapon system. These are essentially laser guided missiles. Then 2017, there's an order for the howitzers. Now, in late 2017, they launched this Ironclad unmanned weapons platform. And I thought this was important because although they don't seem to have made that many sales from this yet, this is a very important thing to be in for modern warfare. So recently, the wars in Iraq, Syria, and Yemen have shown us that, in fact, warfare is changing. It's all about drones and it's all about unmanned combat now. In this footage from Yemen, there's the US main battle tank just being taken out by a Faggot missile. And the truth now is that tanks basically are just an expensive liability in modern warfare. The US and also the UK are scaling down their main battle tanks and aren't really developing new ones. Instead, they're developing unmanned systems. So this is why it was good to see that BAE Systems are involved with producing what is going to be the battlefield of the future. So then in 2018, they won the contract for this amphibious combat vehicle. Then there's the announcement of Team Tempest and the UK combat air strategy. Now this, I think, is a really important part of the BAE puzzle, because following the Eurofighter Typhoon, the Tempest is going to be the next generation. Team Tempest aims for production to begin in 2035. It involves BAE Systems, are definitely a big part of it, with Rolls-Royce making the engines. Leonardo, not sure what they do. MBDA, and they're 37.5% owned by BAE Systems. They make the missile systems. And then some Italian firms, Electronica and Avio Aero. And then now Sweden are involved with Saab and GKN Aerospace. Now, the UK government has committed for 2 billion of spending before 2025. I know from the conference call that BAE Systems are already investing in R&D in this themselves. There's a trilateral framework agreed between UK, Italy and Sweden. It's going to have pilotless options. It's going to have laser beams on it. They're going to use AI in a big way, and they're going to design them so they've got a large swarm of drones, pilotless drones, that are controlled from each individual aircraft. The idea being that just one of these craft can form a whole information network and totally understand the whole battle space over a large area. So this really is an amazing concept, and that's why it's great to dwell on Team Tempest for a bit, because I think that's a very important part of the BAE story moving forward. In 2018, then Qatar ordered their 24 Eurofighter Typhoons. In the end of 2018, Australia decided to buy 9 of the Type 26 frigates. They then won some other contracts here for land with the US Army. Now, an important thing is the US National Defence Authorization Act for 2020. So you can see here, US defence budget is now 738 billion. That's a record, up 3%, and an all-time record for defence spending. So there really is a tangible long-term commitment to military spending as a national priority. Now, this, I should say, is actually a problem perhaps if Biden gets in. We've got the US election just around the corner. Maybe wait to see if Biden gets in, and assuming he doesn't, it's Donald Trump is very bullish for US defence spending. Also, I got from the UK Ministry of Defence website commitment that they can spend an additional 2.2 billion in defence, and the UK have committed that they're going to spend 2% of their GDP on defence. So they have a 39 billion defence budget. That's going to rise to 41.5 billion in 2021. So these are the biggest customer, of course, of BAE Systems are the US and British government. Those are, only indicating they're going to continue to spend. Yes, so in 2020, the Team Tempest jogged on to the next stage with the trilateral framework agreed between Sweden, Italy, and the UK. And then we had the COVID crisis, and the stock price plunged, but in line. And really, it's kind of not ever. We're now in September. You can see the share price isn't that obscenely higher than it was following the Corona dip. So actually, that's pretty favourable in terms of the share price. And even over the last 5 years, the share price is pretty flat, despite all this chop in the middle. Now, at the end of 2019, there was a major contract signed with the US Navy for the Advanced Precision Kill Weapon System, where they essentially said, we're going to buy loads of your Advanced Precision Kill Weapon System. These are basically laser guided rockets, and they now have this 2 billion deal lasting 5 years. And having looked over the last 5 years, this has obviously become an ever more popular product. I think it's a lot cheap. I think the reason is that it's actually a third of the weight and cost of conventional missile systems, and yet it's obviously quite effective. And so this is why it's been so popular, and they really are making quite a lot of money now from this. The BAE Systems have demonstrated that you can actually just attach this not only to planes but onto jeeps and things like this. And so when you look at how modern warfare is changing, as I showed you in that video before, this is a real plus, I think, for BAE Systems. Now then, actually the biggest news story yet is the purchase of Collins Global Position Systems and Raytheon tactical radios. Now this purchase only went through in the last few months, and when I go into the numbers later, it's fairly significant. They initially announced this at the start of the year. It's only gone through now. It was like a forced sale, so this is positive. Raytheon had to sell this part of their business because they were merging with United Technologies, and then there were going to be antitrust issues. So Collins Aerospace, their military GPS is going to be bought for 1.9 billion. BAE Systems have announced tax benefits of 0.4 billion from that purchase. And Raytheon Airborne, who make tactical radios, they've been bought for 0.3 billion. Obviously, this is a big picture enhancement of their military GPS and tactical radios capabilities, which combined with their electrical systems products, I'm sure the sum of the parts is going to be much greater than their individual values, and the BAE Systems managements feel this is going to really seriously increase their profitability. Unfortunately, I'm just not a military analyst enough or knowledgeable about these electrical things to know that and be able to test that. And all I can see is the other side of the account, where in order to effect this takeover, BAE Systems have had to raise 2 billion in bond notes, which is essentially debt, in order to finance this takeover. So as I now go into the numbers a bit more, I'm really pleased so far. The share price is the same as it was 5 years ago. A real nice history of contract wins, and I really dug into the detail of where their revenue comes from. And we see that there's a lot of robustness in their sales. So thus far, pretty impressed with BAE Systems. Their numbers, and actually their income does seem to trend upwards. Unfortunately, their expenditure went up $1 billion in a full year 2019 as well. But overall, their operating profit performance has been pretty good, and their net income pretty impressive as a trend the last 5 years. However, unfortunately, in the H1 2020 report that just came out, they reported their profits down, operating profits down 10%, which is a little unfortunate because it spoils this amazing trend I'd seen. So the number of loans they have were about 3 billion. However, that is now up to 4.3 billion in 2020 due to these bond issues. They've actually raised 3.3 billion worth of bonds, 1 billion for a payoff of their pension funds, and then 2 billion to fund their takeover of Collins and Raytheon. This is from their half-year 2020 report, and we can see that despite this 1 billion bailout, their liabilities now are at the 6 billion mark. You know, that's actually pretty concerning to me. So they now have 6 billion in pension obligations, plus over 4 billion in bond issue extra debt they didn't have before because of these bond issues. So yeah, it's quite clear to me that they have significantly increased their debt. I don't really like companies with debt. I think it was their financial director said these evaluations, because they re-evaluated what their pensions were actually worth, and he said something along the lines of that they were very over conservative with their valuation. So although it looked a high number, that was kind of an overestimate for to be on the safe side. But I don't like this additional debt. I can't really understand what they're buying very well. So yeah, this is a negative, this debt. And then when I looked at their retained earnings, you see that here in this graph, you see that the majority of their equity is this other reserves thing, which is unusual. Then their retained earnings is actually in the negative. Negative retained earnings, that's where a company has made a loss they've incurred gets taken from their equity, and so it's negative. And you can see that they're doing a nice job of gradually paying down their negative retained earnings, but it's still at negative 2 billion. And then the majority of their equity is in this other reserves. And I looked into it, and apparently BAE Systems was created initially way back in 1999 when the company Marconi merged with British Aerospace. And when this merger happened, it created into existence a whole load of merger reserve equity. So here's where you can see I took a look into their annual report to try and understand what this merger reserve equity is, and you can see how merger reserve accounts for the majority of their other reserves in their equity statement. And the thing is, so most of their equity is its other reserves. I'm not qualified enough to really understand what this other reserves is, what this merger reserves is. So, there's an explanation there, but I can't say I understand it. And with some other stocks, it's nice and simple. When I look at their equity, the only equity they have in some cases is lots of retained earnings, and I can understand that. But in this case, I don't really understand what most of their equity is. And then we've got this phenomenon of negative retained earnings in their equity as well. So yeah, not something I can play with. Yeah, so overall, my initial strategy for BAE Systems was as a good defensive stock with high dividends that would offer a nice long-term return. When I looked at it, everything looked amazing in terms of their share price and their product portfolio, but unfortunately, they have debt that I don't like, and they have this new 2 billion acquisition that they had to raise 2 billion in loans or in bonds to pay for. I don't understand this. I'm just not technical enough person to understand how that new acquisitions are going to fit in and create future growth. And then also the pension liabilities is something that I don't understand, and I don't like to invest in things that I don't understand. And then finally, the equity, we've got this strange negative retained earnings and this strange other reserves that for me is too complicated for an amateur. So unfortunately, they looked amazing, the weapons they're producing and the longevity of these products. But unfortunately, because of the debt, because of the pensions, and because of the strange equity statements, BAE Systems aren't a company that I can invest in.